any questions that any of you have. And so we can talk about anything COVID-19, anything coronavirus. We can talk about anything that you need help with tonight in that regard. Let's see here. Yeah, I agree. Cox postulates are not being adhered to, so testing is not being done correctly to determine the virus. I mean, yeah, that's true. But can we change whether or not they're going to start adhering to Cox postulates? Not really. Margie says, I used to have oral herpes and the L-lysine knocked it out flat. Will it do the same for this virus? Should I be taking it as a preventative? Margie, there's no research on L-lysine being used in COVID-19, or for my knowledge, even being used with a coronavirus type of infection. So even, again, coronavirus is a family of viruses. COVID, this new one, this SARS-CoV causes COVID-19. And so, or as some people are calling it, the Wuhan, really that's what it is, the Wuhan virus. So there's no research that says that L-lysine helps. I've done a number of topics on things that have what research is showing to be more promising results. Like right now, there's some preliminary data. There's some computational research studies that show, and again, they're computational, so they haven't been tried in humans, but computational trials show that vitamin C might be helpful, that quercetin might be helpful, and that some other plant compounds found in green tea might be helpful. So there's some computational research studies, but it's all just too new. Even the studies on vitamin C, I mentioned earlier that Dr. Weber in New York is using vitamin C and finding better results. That at this point is all anecdotal. It's not research based, but anecdote is what matters when you're in the trenches and on the grounds doing the work. There's a study going on right now on vitamin C therapy in Wuhan, China, being used for people with COVID-19. And, the results have just not been published. They're not done yet. So at this point, we're still waiting back on any kind of research. So could you take L-lysine? You could. Would it be preventative? We don't know. There's just not any evidence and just not any direct research that shows that would be helpful. My advice for any of you looking to ask the question, what are the supplements that you should be taking right now? Go back and watch some of the past shows that I've done where we talked about vitamin C, we talked about NAC and acetylcysteine, we talked about quercetin as being some of the bigger guns, we talked about zinc as being important in all of this. So we talked about a number of different strategies. If you're new to the show and you didn't watch those, just go back and watch the last 2 to 3 weeks of shows. There's a ton of information there that we don't have time to get into all those details tonight. Nunya asks, is the rumor of ibuprofen and Advil true? If you're referring to the rumor that ibuprofen and Advil use can potentially increase the problem, the answer is we don't know. We don't know. We can speculate. Yes, I did a show on this last week where I talked about ibuprofen and Advil and the mechanism of action and their COX inhibitors, cyclooxygenase inhibitors, and how blocking that particular enzyme can lead to a potential prolonged response. So there's pros and cons to it, and nobody knows for certain. So at this point, depending on you as a unique individual, it really is going to depend on you as the unique individual. Because some people would say, well, can we take Tylenol instead? And the answer is, yeah, you could if you were trying to break fever, but should you break the fever? Like that really is the ultimate question. Now, if you're taking those medicines for pain management, then the next question is, why are you needing a drug to manage your pain? What are you doing wrong in your diet and your lifestyle that you're having pain to such a degree that you need to take something to manage it? Let's see here. Juan says, how do you build muscle with a protein metabolism disorder like what I have? You do your best. You may have a disorder, but that doesn't mean that working out isn't going to stimulate growth hormone and other factors that help you build muscle. You can certainly, if you have a protein metabolism disorder, depending on where the metabolic issue is happening, there's a number of different nutritional elements depending on what kind of metabolic disorder you have that you can apply and implement. Let's see here. Lance says, Tabata's high-intensity interval training. You can find a lot of workouts on YouTube. Best way to burn fat and build muscle. Thanks for chiming in, Lance. That's what I was talking about. If you want to look up more workouts and get more ideas for how you can do Tabata, some people get turned off by that term high-intensity interval training. They get scared. You don't have to get scared. It's just A 20-second, well, I had it on the board earlier. 20 seconds of work, 10 seconds of rest. There's nothing scary about any of that. So like some of you are saying, I said, what are you going to be doing? And I said, fill in the blank. Some of you are saying, play guitar, meditate, be happier, gardening, Photoshop. Love it. So I've been playing a lot with my new birds. We've got a new goose and we've got a new duck and we've got some new chicks. I've been posting to Instagram. So those of you who aren't on my Instagram feed, you can check out our barnyard animals there. But that's kind of therapeutic for me and my family, is to just be out in nature and to be able to smile at little tiny babies who are just experiencing the world in a new way for the first time. Yeah, so Robert chimed in on the vitamin C therapy and how the dose should be much higher. He was talking, because I was talking about Dr. Weber. Dr. Weber's a doctor in New York. His dose is low, but I think his dose is low because he can't get enough. So here's the thing. I think he understands that it's important to do higher doses, and they were doing higher doses from my understanding, but they were running low on supplies. So then they had to do something that was somewhat therapeutic. So they chose to go with a lower dose. Because even at those lower doses, they're still seeing positive outcomes. Robert says, some people have stated that elderberry can cause or exacerbate a cytokine storm. Should we avoid taking elderberry to treat COVID-19? Again, elderberry doesn't treat COVID-19. I'm going to be real clear about that. There are no pills, potions, powders, lotions, drugs that have been proven to treat successfully COVID-19. That being said, with the disclaimer, does elderberry cause a cytokine storm? The simple answer is no. There's no research. Look, by the time you're having a cytokine storm, elderberry doesn't trigger a cytokine storm. But if you're having a cytokine storm, it's because the virus has gotten so bad and it's destroyed so much of your lung tissue that storm begins. It's like a snowball. Once it gets going, it just rolls out. And so elderberry is not going to be the thing that causes that cytokine storm, and neither are any of the other herbals. I've seen some of those articles floating around the internet, and there's just no science or research to back up the claims that some of those doctors are making. To me, they're doing a disservice to the community by making those claims. So my answer, in my opinion, on elderberry is that it's perfectly fine and safe to take. Let's see here. I like this. Lance says, I quit Zyrtec and took 1,000 milligrams of NAC for the first time last week, and I had a horrible hay fever-like allergy attack a couple of hours later. Have you ever seen this reaction to NAC? No, you might have just had, if you quit Zyrtec cold turkey and you'd been on it, you could have had a rebound effect. So it might have been the hay fever attack, might have been that your immune system was trying to adjust. So that would be more my thought than anything else. Let's see. Elizabeth says, waking up at 3 to 4 and unable to fall back asleep. So there's several different reasons why a person might do that. I mean, sleep biology is pretty in-depth, but a few different kind of common reasons that we'll see people. One is if they're overstressed. And this is the perfect time for many of you that are overstressed, and so it's disrupting your sleep and you're waking up thinking about COVID-19. So how can you kind of overcome that? And this is different for different personality types, but one is to get a good book and put it on your nightstand. And if you wake up and find yourself waking up, and the book should not be like a highly technical book that requires a lot of focus and attention. It should be something that's kind of a passive book, a book that you could fall asleep reading that doesn't keep you so focused on that you're wide awake and you can't go back to sleep. The other is meditation. Some people find that deep breathing, lying there in bed, deep meditation can be very, very helpful to stay asleep. You might also consider the fact that you may not be getting enough sunshine. Remember, we haven't even talked about melatonin and its antiviral properties that have been studied. But melatonin, which we make from getting sunshine, there's photobiology behind this. So when sunlight hits your eyes, it helps you to produce melatonin. And as you build up melatonin over the day, it's the thing that puts you to sleep at night, but it's also the thing that keeps you asleep during the night. So it's kind of like the balancing hormone to cortisol. So if you're not getting enough sunshine over the course of the day, you might not be building enough melatonin to sleep thoroughly throughout the night. So those would be some of the strategies I would say you want to try to implement first. What do I recommend? What do you recommend care for diabetes insipidus? Teresa, I would recommend getting with a solid functional doctor who understands diabetes insipidus and having some of the proper testing done to give you specific advice on what to do in that situation. Is it safe to use grounding mats since we are forced to be indoors during this time, or do we need to worry about the dirty electricity? You can use grounding mats, but what's the best grounding mat in the world is the earth. So walk out barefoot. If you're locked indoors in a city and you can't get out and there's no possible way to get out, yeah, you can use the grounding mat. I'd worry less about dirty electricity in that regard. The other thing you can use is a grounding sheet. Grounding sheets, if you've never used them or haven't heard of them, you can look them up. They're available to purchase online, a number of different manufacturers, but grounding sheets actually are quite beneficial and quite helpful. How much NAC to take? I have it in powder form. Well, if you're just trying to take NAC as a kind of a good preventative, immune preventative, anywhere between 12 and 1,500 milligrams a day right now is a good amount. Now, some people take NAC as a mucolytic, meaning they're trying to help their mucus break up and break down. And in that regard, 1,800 milligrams, 2,400 milligrams, somewhere in that neighborhood is a good amount to take. I like your answer, Juan. Juan says, I said, what are you guys going to be doing instead of paying attention to all the fear mongering? He says, watch glutenology videos. Good deal, Juan. Aggressive rest therapy. Hoping to have time for that as I'm caught up in helping others. Hungarian friend said her family survived the Spanish flu, took half a teaspoon of bicarb soda to alkalinize. Yeah, aggressive rest therapy. I like that. That's good. Does NAC pull metals out of the brain? As far as I know, I have not seen any research studies that shows that NAC pulls heavy metal out of the brain. Now, there may be some speculation, and there may be some people that talk about NAC being important for detoxification and for removing heavy metals from the body, but I can't, not that I know every research study that's ever been published, but I've never seen any research that shows that NAC actually pulls heavy metal out of the brain. Now, NAC purports and promotes the production of glutathione, and glutathione is very, very potent, that detoxification of not just heavy metals, but a lot of things. But again, never seen any research on NAC as a detoxifying agent for brain accumulative heavy metals. I agree with you, Dave. It's the anti-convinced. A lot of you are panicked about COVID, and I will just say what Dave just said is he said, sorry for these anti-conventional thoughts, but 61,000 people in the U.S. died last year from flu, and there wasn't a frenzy. 81,000 in 2017, 2018. My thoughts are I agree. I think that the several governments are overreacting to this. I think it should be specific and targeted to the area that's being affected more than it should just be like in the state of New York. It's ridiculous to close down the entire state when a lot of the state's not even being affected. And I know what some of you may be saying, yeah, but they could get affected if the people in those dense population areas were to go out into the country and infect them. Yeah, but you can't I don't know, this is just my opinion. You shouldn't shut down all function and all life for the fear of something. Like living in that limbic brain and that fear mentality doesn't serve us. And that's not to say this isn't a problem. And that's not to say that COVID isn't hurting people or killing people. That's not to say that the hospitals in New York aren't full. They are. But if we look at, where this virus has the potential to spread and really be affecting people is in really, really dense urban population areas, really, and the areas where the virus has a chance to spread unchecked. And so where there are a lot of bums and homeless people, it's a bad idea. To me, you shouldn't be quarantining tax-paying citizens. You should be picking up the people who have the ability to harbor this virus, and then that virus can mutate and spread through the population like wildfire. And what I've seen tax-paying citizens be shut up in their homes while, and this is even the case in Houston. I actually read the court order is that if somebody was homeless, you couldn't bother them. That they were not to be quarantined. They were not to follow the same rule of law that everybody else was being forced to follow. It doesn't make any sense. A lot of the governmental bodies that are making some of these decisions, in my opinion, are messing up, but they're human. We're all flawed. People are going to make mistakes. I just think if you can't dwell on it to such a great degree, that's why I say take care of your own, because that's really all that you have the power to do is to take care of yourself. Let's see, Barbara. I'm sewing face masks for medical staff. Love it, Barbara. Taking care of the folks that are taking care of other folks. Let's see. Do we need to balance out our vitamin D3 intake with vitamin K2? If so, what would be the ratio? The answer is yes and no. Like for me, a lot of people will buy supplements online and they'll buy like a vitamin K or a vitamin D. Depends on how long you're going to be taking it. If you're like, for example, we talked about high doses of vitamin D as a therapy the other day. And in that regard, you're only using it for 3 days. So in that case, you don't really need to be taking vitamin K with it because there's not going to be any major detriment as a result of not doing that. The other depends on whether or not you're actually vitamin D or vitamin K deficient. So like when people come to see me in my practice, we test them for vitamin D and vitamin K deficiency, and we make those decisions based on their own unique biochemistry as opposed to just generalizing that everybody taking vitamin D should also be on K and vice versa. How can you increase, I love this question. Diana wants to know, in the fight against COVID, how can one increase intracellular levels of zinc? So one of the best ways to increase intracellular zinc is by taking quercetin. Quercetin actually opens up the pores on the surface of the cells that allow, because remember, zinc is an ion, and so it's got a charge, and so there are pores in the cell membrane that allow those things in or out. And what quercetin does, according to some research, is it helps open up those pores to allow more zinc to flood into the cells. So if you want to increase intracellular zinc, one of the ways that you can go about doing it is quercetin. Now, you can take supplemental quercetin. You can also eat foods that are higher in quercetin. And so that's probably the best known way to get your zinc levels into the cell, to push it into the cell a little bit more aggressively. Let's see here. I like that. Ruth chimed in. I take Dr. Osborne's magnesium and sleep soundly throughout the night. That's another strategy for better sleep, is to use magnesium, especially. We've got a number of different kinds. I've got one called Clear Mag, which passes the blood-brain barrier. It's a magnesium with a special binder that passes through the blood-brain barrier, so that if you're struggling to get enough adequate magnesium into your brain for sleep function, that can be very helpful in that form. What's the best brand of melatonin to use for kids? The one that's pharmaceutical grade. I mean, kids or adults alike. We have one called melatonin CR, controlled release. It's a controlled release so that it slow releases throughout the course of the night. Let's see, Danielle. Licorice root has seemed to have helped me reset my diurnal clock. Yeah, licorice is a known agent that aids cortisol and adrenal hormone output. So Jessica says, it's off topic. I've had restless legs since I was 10. Now I'm 36. I have been eating grain-free for 2 months. Is there more I could do be doing to help with it? Stay grain-free. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of different nutrients that are known to cause restless legs. And I say nutrients, I mean nutrient deficiencies. So iron deficiency can cause restless legs. Folate deficiency can cause restless legs. Calcium or magnesium deficiency can cause restless legs. What I would suggest that you do is get with your doctor and ask them to run your intracellular levels of vitamin and minerals to see where you're at. And that way you know specifically what else you could be doing, because otherwise you could guess at a lot of those different nutrients and you might be guessing wrong for what your current unique needs are. Let's see, is NAC better taken with food or on an empty stomach? Yes, with an empty stomach or away from other proteins. So the thing with NAC is it's an amino acid. So if you eat a piece of steak and take your NAC, it's going to compete with the other amino acids in that steak for its absorption. But if you ate a banana and took the NAC, then now it's not having to compete with other amino acids to really get in through those binding sites in your intestines. So the key is you can take it on an empty stomach. You can also take it with non-protein based foods or not heavily protein based foods, because some people take NAC on an empty stomach and it makes their stomach upset. And so taking it with a little bit of food can kind of reduce that symptomatology. Let's see here. Zinc. Is zinc good for dermatitis herpetiformis? Zinc is good if you're deficient in zinc, and zinc is just good for us. It's an essential nutrient. But dermatitis herpetiformis is the skin manifestation of celiac disease. So the best thing you can do for DH is to completely cut grain out of your diet. And if this is new to you and you're not hearing this and you've just heard about the gluten-free diet, but you've been told wheat, barley, and rye, you should be cutting it out. Look, you need to be cutting out wheat, barley, rye, corn, oats, rice, sorghum, millet, teff, triticale, all the grains. If you don't know that and this is the first time you're hearing it, go read No Grain, No Pain. Put that on your book list over this whole COVID-19 lock-in. Looking for a regular GP who will be supportive of your functional medicine protocol. What question do I need to ask, or is there a certain type of doctor? I think ultimately the question to ask is, or the conversation to ask, if you're looking for a doctor to support a functional medicine protocol, is to simply say, look, doc, I really strongly and firmly believe that the power of nutrition and diet and lifestyle and choice is more powerful than any medicine you can give me, minus a life-threatening situation. And if that's not something that you agree with or believe in or will honor, then maybe this isn't a good fit. Like, you just need to go in and maybe before you make an appointment and waste your time is to call the office and just ask the staff, look, does the doctor honor and respect nutrition, diet, and lifestyle? Because if they don't, you're going to be butting heads indefinitely. To me, it's like ridiculous to even imagine that a doctor wouldn't honor nutrition, diet, and lifestyle as an important parameter of health, but you'd be surprised at how many that don't. Okay, let's see here. Does zinc compete with magnesium? Should I take these supplements at separate times? There's a little bit of competition, but not severely so. You can take them separately. Do you find it difficult to give up cow dairy? I heard it increases mucus, but dairy is so addictive. Well, it depends on the type of cow dairy. I think a lot of people struggle not with necessarily cow dairy. I think they struggle with the chemicals that are used in the dairy industry, the feed that the cows are being given, the hormones that the cows are being given, the genetic manipulation behind what kind of cows are being milked. I think it's deeper than the actual dairy itself. But dairy can be mucogenic, and some people still are lactose intolerant, and some people are still allergic to dairy, even if the dairy comes from a healthy source. So Dwayne wants to know how to lose more body fat and gain more muscle while taking a corticosteroid. So Dwayne, this is not, just be clear, this is not me telling you to stop taking your corticosteroid. Like, I don't want you to construe this as medical advice in that way. But one of the side effects of corticosteroids is muscle loss. So it's really, really hard to override the muscle atrophy effect that corticosteroids can induce. Corticosteroids, we know they cause atrophy of the muscle and the bone. We know they cause magnesium and calcium and zinc and vitamin D deficiency. We know they don't really solve the problem. I mean, it'd be one thing if you had major Addison's disease where you needed some cortisol because without it you would die. But most people that are put on corticosteroids are being put on it because they have a little inflammation, because they have a skin rash, or because they have inflammation in a joint, or whatever it might be. And so it's, in my opinion, many doctors abuse the use of corticosteroids without considering the long-term side effects, especially in the realm of autoimmune arthritis, where it's used almost like candy, to Halloween. Trick-or-treaters, here's your corticosteroid, here's your corticosteroid. Instead of asking the question, why do you have inflammation? They say, let's block the inflammation. It's a philosophical mismatch. If you are being enlightened, and this is like, wow, I didn't realize that I could ask the question, what causes the inflammation? Because for a lot of doctors, they don't care what causes the inflammation. They only care that they have the medicine with the power to block inflammation. And so they're really just trying to appease your symptoms. They're not doing it out of ill will. I don't think they're doing it out of meanness or out of a desire to sell more drugs. I think they're just doing it as this is the tool they have in their tool belt. So this is the tool they're going to use. And they want to be compassionate towards you because you're in pain. So in that compassion, they're trying to help you. But what they don't realize or what they don't think about is that they're not really helping you if they're making you dependent upon a drug for the rest of your life to control pain and inflammation. And the only real way to help you would be to help you identify the origin or the source of why that inflammation exists in the first place. So if you're struggling with weight loss and muscle loss, like losing weight and putting muscle on, there's a more fundamental question to ask, which is, what is the need for that corticosteroid long term? Why are you using it? What are you needing to use it for indefinitely? Find that answer, and you don't have to worry about doing something special to gain muscle and lose weight while you're taking a corticosteroid, because the corticosteroid becomes an irrelevant part of the conversation. Let's see. What can a person who is quarantined in a moldy house do to alleviate chest pain, difficulty breathing, blurry vision, and other symptoms if mold illness when being outside isn't always possible? Boy, that's a tough one, Elaine, but I would say call your doctor and ask them to write you a prescription for a nebulizer. I'm going to write this down for you. Nebulized glutathione. You have to get it by prescription, so you got to work with your doctor on that one. But a nebulizer just basically, it aerosolizes glutathione, and you can breathe aerosolized glutathione into your lungs, and it can have a profound impact on inflammation in your lungs, and it might be helpful, and it might help you kind of get through this time, but you got to get a prescription to be able to do that. So call your doc and ask them about nebulized glutathione, because your other option, a lot of doctors, they'll give you that nebulized steroid inhaler, or they'll give you that steroid. So Dave wants to know, with all we know about food being medicine, have medical schools introduced more courses about nutrition? If not, why not? Look, I don't know. I don't follow what every medical school does. I know it's still a major issue. The last time when I wrote No Grain, No Pain, and it was published in 2016, at last count, it was the average medical school had less than 7 hours of training. Now, if you talk to a medical doctor and you say, well, you had 7 hours or less of training, and you say, well, tell me about that training that you had. What a lot of those doctors will say, well, we really didn't get any training in nutrition. What we got is we got training on how unimportant nutrition was. So the training was not nutritional training, but it was antithesis of nutritional training. So is that changed from 2016 to today? I don't know. Probably not a whole lot. Most doctors still have to go outside of the medical curriculum to get postgraduate information as it relates to nutrition. Let's see here. So Dwayne, as a follow-up to what you said, we were talking about earlier, I had a benign pituitary tumor removed. My doctor said that the corticosteroid controls my kidney function. Well, if you had the tumor removed, then what do you need a steroid to control your kidney function for? I might get a second opinion on that. It doesn't, there may be some validity to what your doctor's saying, and there may be a lack of validity in a sense to what he's saying, or there may be another opinion that exists that might put you on a better path or a different path. Glenda wants to know, do I recommend Tabata for someone with rheumatoid arthritis? If I exercise too hard, I have a lot more pain. So this is where, yes, I do recommend Tabata, but I also recommend something called scaling the Tabata. So what does that mean? So if you're suffering with rheumatoid arthritis and it flares you up, too much exercise can. Sometimes when a person has acute inflammation. Now, one of the things there would be, why are you being inflamed, or why are you flaring up with exercise? You should be able to exercise even with rheumatoid arthritis. And so going back to, have you read No Grain, No Pain? Have you applied phase 1 and phase 2 of the diet? Because a lot of people that do that put their RA into complete remission. That being said, a Tabata can be scaled. What does that mean? Scaled means you approach it to the level of fitness that you're at. So if you can't do a push-up, do a wall push-up. It's a little bit easier. It's not quite as aggressive. It might not cause you to flare quite as much. Same thing with like a squat. If you can't do a full squat because your knees have fluid in them and they get inflamed, then you can do like a wall sit, like a wall hold, where you just lean into the wall and you just hold the legs, and you do that 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off. I mean, there's a variety of different scaled maneuvers where if one maneuver is too challenging or too difficult, then you can scale the maneuver back and do something a little bit easier that matches who you are and what your fitness level is. But there should never be an excuse not to be able to exercise, even if you have a joint problem, or even a really advanced case of rheumatoid arthritis where you've got limitations in your range of motion. There are things that you can do. There are band exercises. There are other motions and range of motion exercises that can be implemented. The key is to start, because the longer you wait to start, the more damage is done. Remember that joints themselves don't have a blood supply. How do they get nourishment? How do they get vitamins, minerals, and nutrients? They get it through movement. And when you stop moving a joint because it hurts, then the joint atrophies and the muscles around it atrophies. And then you start to develop not just an autoimmune arthritis, but you start to develop lack of movement leads to something called osteoarthritis, which is what doctors oftentimes refer to as age-related. Doesn't really have anything to do with age as much as it has to do with disuse. So it's disuse of the joint creates an arthritis that progresses with time. That's why people that get on bed rest for too long, they're stiff and their backs hurt, and sometimes it actually makes them worse as opposed to better. Let's see. Do I recommend a vibrating platform as a form of exercise? Yeah, that's actually kind of a good side note to somebody who does have a lot of joint pain. A vibration platform or a vibration plate can be a good place to start in that regard, because it's a lower impact type of exercise that can still do a lot to improve fluidic movement of synovium, or the liquid that surrounds your cartilage, to nourish the cartilage and to help start reversing those damages. All right, let's see. Let's go down on the left side. Let's scroll down and look at some of those newer. Let's see, go back. There we go. Sharon says, if you have a 2-week wait period and you are out of your supplies, will your immune system be strong enough to withstand the virus? Clarify that for me, Sharon. What do you mean a 2-week wait period for what? And supplies, what are you talking about? You're out of food, or what kind of supplies are you out of? I would hope that your immune system, could be strong enough to support you. Again, but depending on the supply, if you're talking about food, you need food for your immune system. It's a critical element, especially protein. And I talked about that a few weeks ago, getting adequate protein for your immune system to maintain its healthy function during this time. Let's see. Nancy wants to know, can you tell me what not to eat if you have a diverticulitis? So far, I eat broth for 3 days, and I eat soup in the blender, beet, apple, carrot. I eat probiotic apple vinegar, apple cider vinegar drink more, and I cut news because it stresses me too much. That's a good job, Nancy. What not to eat? So if you have diverticulitis, meaning you have a little outpouching where food traps can occur, then you want to eat things that don't have small particulates. So like seedy foods, you don't want to eat like a bunch of pumpkin seeds, or sometimes people put together like the trail mixes with a lot of seeds and berries and things of that nature with tiny seeds in them. Like, you want to try to avoid those. You're probably doing a good job if you have active diverticulitis, meaning an active inflammation, by eating purees, eating soups, eating pastes. If you're going to eat nuts, eat nut pastes that are already ground up into paste so that you don't have to worry about it, again, getting trapped into those diverticuli. Ooh, Pamela, if you're an RN and you have RA and you're on Orencia and methotrexate, boy, I would do everything you could, Pamela, to support your immune function. What I'd first do is talk, if you're on the front lines and you're an RN and you're taking immunosuppressant medications, you should not be on that front line. You might have a conversation with your rheumatologist about those medicines that you're using. I would strongly encourage you to read No Grain, No Pain, because if you're having to use Orencia and methotrexate to control your symptoms, and then you're also working that front line, you are one of the high risks. That defines you as a high risk person to pick this virus up. So to me, a kind of a dangerous predicament for you to put yourself into. Hi, Misty. Good to see you back from the scleroderma community. Hi, scleroderma community. Love you guys. Stay strong. Let's see. Yeah, so we've answered that one. What about Pilates? I think Pilates is great. I think the exercise that you can do in your home is great, provided you do it. That's the thing about exercise. No exercise program is better than another. if you don't do it. So I'd say know what you like and do what you like, because there's a greater likelihood that you'll be consistent with it, because that's how exercise works. It's a consistent application over time, and just like diet and nutrition, consistent application over time. If I don't mind, what's liposomal glutathione? Never heard of it. Might be a different meaning here where I am. Maybe beneficial for me. Many thanks. Liposomal glutathione is just the type of glutathione that is absorbed better than regular glutathione. See, regular glutathione is a tripeptide. It's not really well absorbed in the intestine. So some scientists have wrapped it into a liposome, which gets better absorption across the intestinal lining. My advice is, I don't like a lot of your liposomals. And again, I've said this before, a lot of them have corn derivative or corn alcohol in them or some other kind of GMO ingredient. And I don't like that. I don't care for that. So a lot of your liposomal technologies, I don't use them because of those reasons. And again, if you've read No Grain, No Pain, you'll better understand that. As far as what can you do if you want to boost your glutathione levels, one of the things you can do is take NAC, which we've talked about a couple times tonight, but I did a whole show on a few weeks ago. Okay, I'm cooking lamb soup with fresh, organic, and veggies and kettle and fire bone broth, feeding the body and mind. Love it, Matthew Gibbs. That's awesome. That sounds like a good meal. I'm getting hungry myself. Let's see. What's the best brand of melatonin? You can check out our controlled melatonin CR, controlled release. Lisa wants to know, I've been hearing a lot lately about plant-based diets. Is this the way of eating healthy? Look, one diet it can be healthy, but it's not healthy for everyone. You know, a plant-based diet, I've seen people go down. I've seen people where their immune systems were literally crushed by a plant-based diet. And I've seen other people who did really dramatically well on a plant-based diet. I think more than anything else, it's which diet is right for you as a unique person is what should be assessed. And that in and of itself, that falls under what I call the 3 cardinal rules of nutrition, which is number 1, you can't get healthy eating food that's not healthy. Number 2, it's understanding what healthy is. So if you have a misconception about what is and what is not healthy, then you may be a victim of indoctrinated information. And so a lot of these plant-based communities say that plant-based diets are the only way to go and that there's no other form of healthy diet. And that's just not true. Some people thrive on a carnivore diet and some people thrive on a plant-based diet. Again, it's getting to understand who you are as a unique person. Is there a nutritional component to nephrotic syndrome? Absolutely there is. And oftentimes in my experience where I've seen nephrotic syndrome, even in children, it's oftentimes caused by gluten sensitivity, not celiac disease, but gluten sensitivity. So if you haven't had your child checked for gluten sensitivity, that's something that I would ask the doctor to do immediately, especially if they've diagnosed nephrotic syndrome and they have no reason as to why the nephrotic syndrome exists. They're telling you, we don't know what causes it, it's just there, and your child just happens to be the unlucky lottery winner of that horrible disease. No, there's usually a cause. You just have to dive into what that is. Is there an autoimmune component to Ehlers-Danlos? Yes, there is. Let's see, Cheryl wants to know, have I ever heard of mega dosing on antioxidants like vitamin C or resveratrol have negative side effects? Not really. Look, how many people have died from vitamin C overdose? 0. How many people died from aspirin last year? 13,000. How many people died from resveratrol last year? 0. So, you know, a lot of, and that's not to say don't be concerned about the potential for negative reactions in supplements. It's just say a lot of people and a lot of doctors try to scare people away from using natural agents, not because they're dangerous, but because they don't understand them and they try to project their own fear onto you, and you just can't allow them to do that. You know, vitamin C works. It works very, very well. Can you take quercetin if you have diverticulitis? Yes, you can. Let's see here. We got to wrap this up here pretty quick. How long can you take NAC safely? Yeah, several months. I mean, generally speaking, if your NAC side effects and symptoms of I've had people on NAC for 6 months at a time with no side effects. So it's pretty safe to take unless you're super high dosing. And then you probably want to work with somebody who knows what they're talking about to monitor you. Okay. With coronavirus, they are saying if you take ibuprofen, when you have it, it will double the ACE2 enzyme. It doesn't double the ACE2 enzyme. It doubles the ACE2 receptor. So, Rebecca, you have to understand that surface of the cell, you have ACE2 receptors. And these receptors are how the virus, so if we look, we'll just call that coronavirus, they dock to that receptor and then they penetrate the cell and then they get access to your DNA. And that's why the theory behind ibuprofen is that you don't want to use it, because it increases the quantity of ACE2 receptors on the surface of the cell. Other drugs do this too. Some of your blood pressure medications. There's a class of blood pressure medications called ARBs, angiotensin receptor blockers, are known to also upregulate ACE2, and then ACE inhibitors. So check your blood pressure medications and have a conversation with your prescribing doctor. That's the best thing that you can do. Don't just stop taking them. But these medications, ibuprofen, ARBs, and ACE inhibitors, all increase the expression of ACE2 on the surface of your cells, allowing for greater capacity for coronavirus to have access to the internal mechanisms of your cells and replicate. So that's why you want to look at those things. Now, my advice is if you're trying to do something for a fever, go back and watch the show I did a couple of weeks ago on whether or not, when to lower fever, what to use to lower fever, and what not to use to lower fever, because we went in depth on that show. Okay, let's see here. Somebody's asking, so somebody purchased one of our immune packages online and they're wondering if it comes with instructions. Monica, no. The answer to that is, supplements are taken per the individual. We do give recommended suggestions, but you can also email glutenology@gmail.com if you want to get kind of a more specific recommendation. Just email glutenology@gmail.com and we'll get back with you on that. Okay, so somebody's asking, if you puree the raspberry and strain off the seeds, is that okay for diverticulosis? Yeah, if you're going to that length to avoid the seed accumulation, yeah, that would be perfectly fine. Okay. What are your thoughts about ancient grains like quinoa, amaranth, and kamut and spelt? So first of all, quinoa and amaranth aren't grains. Technically, they're pseudograins. But quinoa has been shown in a couple of different research studies to actually activate the same HLA-DQ receptor, create inflammation that wheat gluten does. 52%, I think the last study on amaranth showed amaranth cross-contamination with wheat and other gluten-free flours, so don't recommend it either. And as far as kamut and spelt, they're not gluten-free, so don't recommend those as well. Just because something's ancient doesn't mean it doesn't contain gluten. And that's kind of a common misconception in what people believe. Gluten is gluten, and 20 parts per million, meaning that the size of a breadcrumb, can create inflammatory damage for up to 2 months. So you want to try to avoid it. If you have gluten sensitivity, you definitely want to avoid it. Okay, we're going to wrap this up. Before I go, I want to make sure those of you who are new tonight, come visit me at glutenfreesociety.org. Make sure you sign up for our newsletter. It's the world's largest, #1 gluten-free newsletter. If you want to learn more about the true gluten-free diet and how to navigate the diet and overcome autoimmune problems. Also, make sure that you type in, if you didn't already, some of you are already doing it, and I greatly appreciate that. Remember what our mission is. It's to save 100 million lives. And the only way we're going to do that is to get people out there educated, and you help me get those people educated by sharing and by hashtagging so that people can find us. So if you know a loved one, if you've got a family member, if you know somebody who could benefit from the information on the Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain Show, don't be stingy. Share the love. Pay it forward. Together we can help more and save 100 million lives. Look, I'm wishing you all a fantastic week, and stay safe. And again, take to heart what we talked about today. I think it'll take you through this pandemic with flying colors. We'll see you next Monday for another episode. Hey, if you've you've got a functional medicine or health question that you'd like me to answer for you, make sure you send me an email, glutanology@gmail.com, and we'll do our best to create a video answer just for you. Have a great day.